And welcome to our Fields and Features section of our daily space weather video content. It's 2 of 3 of our daily space weather videos for the day. We're looking at magnetohydrodynamic pressure around Earth's magnetic moment from space. It's the Geospace Magnetosphere movie showing the last 4 hours. Magnetohydrodynamic pressure modeled in nanopascals by the Space Weather Modeling Framework, courtesy of University of Michigan. And we're seeing that subside along with the solar wind speed. We should see a great signal here when we see the coronal mass ejection strike. Watch our previous space weather video about that. I did notice that we've been failing to show the magnetic perturbations on the ground level. Here's Earth's magnetic moment from the ground. So this is the past 4 hours also. Keep in mind, this is a different units. We're sort of showing a different units here. This is nanotesla as opposed to hectopascals. Nanotesla is magnetic flux density. Since it's being modeled at the surface of the planet, again, it's 4 hours of data. This is great at showing things like locations of induction into power grids as well as the aurora during times of geomagnetic storm and unrest. Continuing on, looking at the heliospheric current sheet. So we looked at some earthly magnetic features. Here are some solar magnetic features. Earth remains in a south pole current sheet. We're not expecting any changes to this anytime soon based on the activity that we currently see. South pole current sheet shown here in red, North pole current sheet shown in green. And here's the GOES magnetometer readings over the past 3 days. Fairly smooth readings there as we've seen the coronal hole high-speed stream subside. We'll get to that in a moment. First, the line of sight ecliptic plane field plot. This is basically the same as 2 frames ago, except now we're showing the line of sight view and the solar magnetogram. As solar cycle 25 progresses, we're watching coronal holes as well. Here is the coronal hole line of sight plot. You can see a bunch of south pole oriented coronal holes there stretching over the equator. Although really throughout solar cycle 25 we've been seeing a bit of a shortage of coronal hole features. So don't be surprised to see a pickup in coronal holes. So we've got a very well defined one here. This is south pole oriented. Just moving into the earth facing zone. We can expect a high speed wind from that in a few days. Coronal holes, they blast out solar protons at high speeds, and they can cause geomagnetic effects. Next, we'll move on to sunspots. I don't know why this image here isn't animated. Sunspot 2943 has degraded since yesterday. The rest have remained largely stable. So we'll just leave it at that. The likelihood of major solar flares is still quite high. I still say 2941 is going to blow. Don't be surprised to see an M-class flare, relativistic particles, and coronal mass ejections from that. So this is 2941 up here. It is still, in my opinion, the most likely place to produce major flares. The only significant flare we saw in the past 24 was from 2939. Watch our previous video and our next video, our bonus set features segment, to see additional views of that. Continuing on with even more data. Here's the X-ray flux over the past 3 days. Again, no major flares. This was a C4.9, I believe. Peak flux was at 2140 or so. 2140, between 2140 and 2150, it was about a 10-minute peak there. Otherwise, fairly underperforming sunspot groups. We've got major sunspot groups and not a lot of flaring. If we do see an M-class flare from sunspot 2941, don't be surprised to see a spike in the proton flux and some polar high-frequency radio blackouts as a result of that. They could extend for several days if that does happen. At the moment, no spikes in the proton flux, no relativistic particles. And we see the subsiding here of the coronal hole wind stream. So coming down, actually we're seeing some spikes just happening here as we make the video. But we did get all the way down to below 400 kilometers per second. Current readings are showing up at 472 kilometers per second and about 4.5 protons per cubic centimeter. Quite diffuse is that solar wind. When a coronal mass ejection arrives late tonight into early tomorrow, we can expect to see a great, well-defined signal associated with that. KP index is only at 1 for you new viewers. Thanks for tuning in. Congratulations on realizing the channel exists. That is a measurement of global geomagnetism. Each bar represents 3 hours. And next we're going to show you a solar system forecast to keep everybody oriented. Here's where things are now. There's where things will be in a week. It looks like about 8 days until the next full moon. We also like to show a star chart on the regs on the channel. This is what's going on above our head here. We're located in Lehigh Valley, Pennsylvania. And that star chart is from in-the-sky.org. That is the all-sky chart. Just put in your location if you want to see that. If you're up before dawn, you may see Mars, Venus, and Mercury rising ahead of the sun. Also Saturn, if you've got a low horizon. They're showing up on the ecliptic, which is this yellow line, the path the sun will take across the sky. Next, the coronal mass ejection watch is what we'll close the video out with. We've got views from Lagrange point 1 and Lagrange point 5, where stereo A is located. The Soho-Lascaux C3 is located at Lagrange 1. So no coronal mass ejections there on the coronagraphs at the moment. Don't be surprised to see some, especially if we see major flaring out of Sunspot 2941. Thanks for tuning in. Congratulations on realizing the channel exists. I'll have been your host, Dan, a.k.a. Smash-O-Mash, signing off from the Smash News Network, least busted name in news.